Put your loving arms over me. Lord, just cover me. Put your loving arms over me. Put your loving arms over me. Father, here I am. I stand here as a man. My actions I don't understand. The things I don't want to do is what I get myself into. And the right thing seems hard to do. I see another law at work in me, a sinful nature, iniquity, waging war against the law of my sanity. But they say I'm anointed, holy, I'm not fit, I'm not worthy. Oh Lord, this is me. Put your loving arms over me. I'm sinning, I'm worthy. Wash me in your cleansing blood. Take away impurities. I don't want to preach and work miracles and then you say you don't know me. Put your loving arms over me. Lord, just cover me. Put your loving arms over me. There is never no condemnation for those who walk in the mercies of Christ. The perfect love covers my sin. My righteousness don't rely in me.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening.
And welcome to Intimate Moments.
Intimate Moments, yes, welcome.
Right, hey, everybody, good evening. And welcome to Intimate Moments. It's a joy and privilege for you to join us this evening.
Amen.
I don't know how you're going. How have been your day today? How has been your day today? How are you doing? How are you doing? You could share it live. You can tell somebody Intimate Moments is on.
Amen.
Intimate Moments is on. It's on, it's on, it's on. So you can share the live. You can be a part of what will happen this evening as we continue on the subject, the journey of the preacher's kids.
Yeah.
So you can be a part of what is happening. We want to encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, Intimate Moments, and share the live. And like the page, you know what I mean, subscribe to it, hit the bell so every time we go live you can be a part of what will happen. So how was your day, my love?
It was okay, it was good.
It was good?
Yeah, it was a good day.
Right. So what you did so far that made your day so good? Was it me or the absence of me? Which one?
No, this is the day that the Lord has made, so you rejoice in the fact that.
And you're glad in it.
Yes, and you're glad in the day. You understand? I mean, the day started out, well, and we give God thanks and praise that it's, we are all here, we are all well.
All right.
And it's a lot to give God thanks for. That song we used to sing, count your blessings, name them one by one.
Amen.
And sometimes we only look at blessings as those big things. But listen to me. The fact that we are well, the fact that we are alive, the fact that, we have food to eat, those are things that sometimes we take for granted because we have. But the persons who don't have good health, who don't have food to eat, who have issues, they are the ones who want what we have.
But we have it.
But we have it, and it's not something that we both in, but we, I usually say it's always by the grace of God.
By the grace of
By
God.
the grace of God. So it was a good day, amen.
Right. So I enjoy my day today. Was a lot of hard work as normal.
As normal, yes.
As normal. It's a hard sort of work as normal. And you know what I mean? We give God praise and thanks for that. So we want to encourage you to be a part of what is happening tonight as we await our guests. Our guests should be on in a little bit. So if we want to say shout out to those who are online, we want to shout you out. For those who are online, go on and shout them out.
So we want to say good night to Alice, Sister Alice, Sister Michelle Lewis. She's saying good evening. We're saying good evening. And we know that there are some other names that I'm not seeing right now. So
let me see the names I could see.
Yeah.
Michelle Lewis, Alice, and there's some other names that we can't see right now, but there's some. I don't know why we can't see the names.
Yeah, you're not seeing the names.
So
but,
while we await our guests, good night, Michelle Lewis. Yes, and we have Sister Alice Gordon James. Where is that James? I don't see the James at the end there.
Yes.
Right. So how you doing, Sister Alice? How it been? As you know, we are talking about the journeys of the preacher's kid, and last week we had
Inga.
We had Inga, Kashib McLeod.
Yes. The week before that we had Atkins.
Yeah.
And
his wife,
Carrie Ann Glasgow. Yes, who are two preachers' kids who got married.
So we had them last week, and it was good because we enjoy the conversation. And one of the reasons why we're talking about the journey of this preacher's kid is that so many times we tend to misunderstand
misunderstand them, ignore their needs, ignore the issues that they are facing. And it's so important that we acknowledge the fact that they are individuals just like everybody else, and that preachers' kids, as they grow, for many of them who would have been born into
because it's not an easy thing to be born into the household.
Exactly.
And then you ask yourself, I didn't cut out for this.
Yes, and you would hear a lot of them say, I didn't want this.
I didn't want this, and they just threw it on
but
me.
This is just, you understand, and
so
they find themselves in a position that, they didn't
cater for it anyhow.
They
didn't cater.
You understand? And then they're now in it, and then high expectations are now being placed upon them. And you're asking them, actually, especially for those who are born into it and as they grow, from, childhood to teenage, that kind of thing, you are actually expecting them or asking them to behave like mature adults. And it's impossible to expect children, even though they are pastor's children growing up in a pastor's house, to be mature adults. I mean, please.
It is hard.
But it is unreasonable because children will be children.
Well, I'll tell you something. I had a discussion with our guest, and she have a unique perspective.
Okay.
And this is the thing about it. Having a unique perspective is what makes this thing work.
Yeah.
And I always say, we must celebrate the differences and not the similarities.
And not only just the similarities. Yes.
So as we celebrate, so we want to welcome our guest this evening, and we want to. I want to read her bio. Her bio is very long. She's not the first time she has been on this program. Right? It's not the first time she has been on this program, but we want to welcome our guest. Good night, Sister Billie Sterling. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are hearing you fine. You're good.
Good.
You're
Don't
good.
read the whole bio, just read a small part.
Yes. Oh my God. Tell you it. Let me read a little portion because Billie Sterling Lewis is the holistic counselor and psychologist with over 12 years experience in providing psychotherapy to youths and adults. She provide behavioral change and work with the number of others in this area. But I want to get to this nice part. This nice part. She's born again. And listen to this. She is married. So all who is looking on, forget that. She is a married woman. And she's not just a married woman, she's married to a preacher. The pastor, is Pastor Navin Lewis. Nevin Lewis.
Yes.
And they serve in the what they call that area? Bower Junction? Is that area they call that area?
Yeah. Montgomery.
Montgomery area in the that's right for over. She worked with him for over 8 years. So we want to welcome you, and it's such a joy and privilege for you to be with us tonight. How are you doing?
Thank you. I am good. I am a little bit stressed and tired, but I am good. I'm happy to be here. Thank God that He gives us strength.
Amen.
I'll tell you something. We are glad to have you here.
Amen.
And we started this whole series about the journey of the preacher's kid. And we had the opportunity to talk to a number of people, both on-set and off-set, about their own experience. And one of the things that we have discovered, that everybody have their own experience.
Yes.
And those experience kind of sum up who we are and what we do at the end, especially when we are into ministry. And so I want you to introduce yourself as different to me, and because I know you're married to a preacher, and who is Billie Sterling? Because I know your father, but I don't want to dive into that. Tell me who is Billie Sterling.
All right. So good night, everybody, and Pastor and First Lady. Thank you for having me on. I am Billie Sterling Lewis. Some of persons, I think most people know by now that I am Antiguan by birth and rearing. Barbados is my second home, and I have settled in Tobago. However that story go, I say I am Miss CARICOM. I love CARICOM. I love the Caribbean. I love our people. I have no qualms about that. I am actually the last of 3 children.
Wow.
And yes, I am a pastor's child. My father is actually very funny. So he would say, when we say kid, he say, you're goat. Because my father is that kind of man. You know my daddy. So we were taught not to use the word kid when referring to children, because kid is the child of a goat.
Oh,
I got you. Children.
Yes.
So we have to say children or whatever. But yes, I am. And now I'm married to Pastor Lewis, Nevin Lewis. He's the pastor of the Montgomery Moravian Church. We've been married for going on 10 years. So it's been quite a journey, quite a while, and it is definitely a life-changing, life-transforming experience. So I'm one of those persons who were born in the church, raised in the church. I remember when I was moving to Tobago, just to share this quickly, my mother and father found it so interesting. They say, you were conceived in Tobago? I'm like, what? So somehow,
oh my
and
God.
it's interesting because they both told me at different times. It's not as if, when Neville and I were getting married, I said I have to move to Tobago. My mommy was like, you were conceived in Tobago. And when I told Daddy, he was like, you're conceived in Tobago. I'm like, well, somehow this is true. And I cycled right back from fertilization to now living in Tobago, where 2 of my 3 children are born in Tobago, and 2 of them were born in Trinidad. So hey, God does His work.
You're true Trinbago and Caribbean. You're a Caribbean woman.
Caribbean woman in the fullest.
Wow. So tell me how it was for you being because you said you have other siblings, right?
Yeah.
And you're the last.
Yes.
How it for you being a preacher's child? How it was for you?
Well, I'm going to have to digress a little bit from that question to answer the question.
All right,
because
no problem.
Being the last child, my parents are actually divorced.
Wow.
Okay.
And so I grew up I was born at the time when things were already downhill. So I always say this, my siblings are the ones who experienced that. I've always said to them, I don't know what it's like. I've never gone to church with my mother and my father.
Oh.
Never.
Wow.
I've never. I've gone to church with mommy. I've gone to church with daddy.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never gone to church as a family unit.
Wow.
It's interesting also that just after because my father would have left, migrated, lived in the States for many years, and my brother left the year after he left. So I have really hadn't had that experience with the men in my family for many, many years. But to say that, I'll explain it in both ways. While that is so, you can call my mother she's a church lady. So everybody in Tobago, Church of God, know her, basically. My mother come from school, Youth for Christ kind of era.
Right.
So
Got you.
she was Sunday school superintendent for many years on move. She was women's fellowship leader. She was regional women librarian. She was women's fellowship leader. So even though my daddy wasn't there for after a while, but I'll get back to the point when he was, I grew up in church, in ministry under my mother, who was also a minister. So my mommy was the pianist. She played for him. She was a Sunday school, like I said, women's fellowship, and I don't know if she was ever on the board because I never paid attention to those things. But I grew up in a home where we never missed Bible study. We didn't miss youth fellowship. Actually, I went to youth fellowship early because I was the last. And mommy just said, well, go away with your brother and sister. So I kind of grew up bigger, yeah. But growing up when daddy was around, taking it back, although I never went to church with my family as a unit, I did do a lot of roaming with daddy. And I think sometimes my brother and my sister and I laugh. We say, boy, we're real sterling. So sometimes when we do certain things, we see the sterling coming out. That's one of the reasons I think I have such an openness to cultures and to different denominations. You know, there's some people who are rigid and stuck in their denomination.
Yeah.
I've never known that.
Wow.
Because even though my father and mother weren't living that well, he had stopped going to our church actually, but he was preaching in other churches. And so we would actually go with daddy to other churches. He had a friend who was building a work, was doing really well, and he was often there. So we went to and it was not a Church of God church, it was a Pentecostal kind of church. I was in Pentecostal a long time. And then when he went to the States to live, he was a pastor in the United Methodist denomination in the States.
Wow.
So when I went to the States to visit him, I was in United Methodist in America. And I tell people all the time, when I see certain things going on in church, it confuses me because I just love church and I just love Jesus. And that's the way it goes. You know? But one of the things that would come out, and I could go straight to it, is that growing up, there's a different measure for you as the pastor's child or as the Sunday school superintendent's daughter. And I was not the one who conformed because I always had a mouth. So I would be the one. Really? I did, yeah. My mother would tell you, she would be like, Billie, I warn you with that. You always say, I don't have to behave like that. I said, well, you don't have to say nothing. I will say it. I always did have it. And so there were times I got in trouble with church people because I wasn't going to take things lying down. And because of the situation with my parents, there was at the same time, believe it or not, from what I experienced, and I could be wrong, but I remember from what I experienced, people now expected less of you.
Wow.
So I grew up in a community because of daddy's, whatever he did or didn't do, people expected my sister and I to get pregnant and drop out of school. People expected us to just kind of be knocked out with man and those sort of things. But the thing is, even when daddy was around, he instilled some very distinct principles in us. He left before I was 10. So if you go according to the psychologist, my formative years, he was around. And if it's one thing we were taught, first of all, that you are a child of God and you are sterling. And I don't know how we put them together, but all of us as siblings live like that. Like literally, we just live like that. So part of that is, for us, the two principles in life were God and education. It's kind of like they have a compromise with that. And then it's a matter of, always walking in who you were as a person. So I had that mixed experience where because of mommy, people had one particular view of us where they thought we were better than people or whatever that was. And then because of daddy, they expected us to not do so well. But I thank God, because of God, no matter what happened, we
Amen.
fared very well in the whole situation.
Wow.
Amen.
So
Amen.
let me ask a question. You indicated a little earlier, I know because you didn't have the opportunity of being in church with your both parents, so you would have indicated that this is the case. But how did the departure of your father, because he was into ministry,
Yeah.
and then, but at the same time, you also indicated that there was a divorce. And at what time did that, and how did that time, especially as a preacher's kid, how did that impact you in church?
Yeah.
Um, Personally, like I said, I'm the last. So I was actually, like I said, I was born when things were already bad. The divorce came when I was around 14, 15. He would already been living in the States for a while and those sort of things. And I remember the divorce came because I remember Mommy and I had a little toss up with that. And
I see it in your eyes.
yeah,
I don't understand why anybody said that mouth.
we did. So him leaving, I actually developed a lot of low. I think I had low self-esteem coming out of that. Because my father's a powerful man. He's really smart. He's the one who kept us. He's weird too. But for instance, we didn't grow up, and I'm not ashamed to say it. We didn't grow up with TV and electricity. He just didn't believe in it. I don't know if it's because he didn't believe in it and he didn't want to pay the bill. Whatever it was.
But was
we
religion?
didn't grow up-
Religion.
It wasn't religion.
Eh?
No, it wasn't. It's just him. But we grew up with a house of books. Literally a house with all his college books and every other book you can think of.
Wow.
So we grew up just reading and seeing and seeing different places in the world. And so we used to go buy people to watch TV. And it wasn't because we couldn't afford it. My father just didn't want to give us TV.
Wow.
So we would say, Daddy, I'm bored. We'll go in the house and read a book. I'm like, I did that already. Well, read another one. So he's really that kind of weird. And him leaving, because although he was the way he was a sort of staker in our lives. I remember every Saturday as a child, we used to go to the beach. Going to church was really nice with him because he went to other churches which was more exciting than ours. So ours, because we come from the Holiness movement, Church of God is Holiness, Wesleyan, Nazarene, Church of God, Reformation, Holiness movement.
More docile.
Back then, yes.
Yeah.
So, like I was in the era when they didn't want women to wear pants, and it was a whole big toss up and church
Right.
Brockway because they can't wear pants, youth fellowship. And so we went to churches where there was hype. So from a young age, I was able to balance between hyped up churches and more, sedated churches.
Yeah.
But it kind of affected me because I felt like I didn't have a necessary thing with my father. And in church, you kind of felt, in my mind too, a little less than. The only thing that helped me though was there were a number of us in church who had that kind of experience. Actually, one of my best family friends or families are close like that, they had a similar experience. So I always had this dream that my parents would come back together, So as a child, I grew up thinking like that, and God will put it and God will do it. Of course, you face a disappointment where God was concerned because it never happened, and then the divorce came years after.
Wow.
So it did affect me, but it did not affect. Again, that's why our story is different, because I don't think it affected so much our belief in God or our trust and faith in God, because one, like I said, for the years that he was around, he was very firm in how we live as Christians.
He was a rock.
He was, yes. And then Mommy continued that. So we didn't have that choice growing up, and then it wasn't like you're forced because the choice felt good. The choice was actually fun, to be in church, to be in service, to go to Bible study. I mean, you'd fall asleep, but until you got bigger, but you were there, So that's how it was for me. There was a loss. I felt the loss, and you felt that some people look at you differently, and some did. But Mommy kept us grounded, and she kept us afloat really, really, really well.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So, okay, you said that, there were those who had high expectations of you because of your mother and low expectations because of your father. In terms of their interactions with you, so you are a young person and you're interacting with adults. How was the interaction? What, how would they speak to you? When
For
they
my
when they
parents,
no, not your parents, the church people,
Yeah.
church members. How would they respond
right.
to you?
She look how she eyes. Your eye
Well,
just tell
it's
you all that.
according. It's like, oh my man, I'm gonna hold this face together for the rest of the night. So it really would happen a lot in conflict situations. So our pastor who took over, she's been with us 20 years back then. She was a strong woman. She believed in us and whatever, and she pushed us. Our church, you have to have excellence, yeah? So it came out a lot where conflict situations came out, and they would say, remember your sister Sterling daughter. Like, I don't know what that means. If I'm going to tell you something, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
So for some unknown reason, they don't expect you to respond or retaliate.
Yes.
And then there were others who, because although Daddy left, Daddy was still very much known, very big.
Yeah.
Not only in the ministry, in church ministry, but also in his field that he did. He was a farmer. He was a big farmer. He changed the landscape of farming in Antigua.
Wow.
And so people would say, wait, you're Sterling daughter? And I'm like, yeah. Half the time I didn't remember this because like I said, I was a baby. And they would always tell us about how Sterling would sing, because he would sing and he would preach, and Daddy voice big, and you sound like your daddy, and then I sing, and like, oh my, you sound just like Sterling. So, or they would call him Bishop, or they would call him Pastor Sterling. I grew up hearing people calling Daddy Bishop. We just end up calling him Sterling as adults. We say Daddy to his face, eh? But so there was that mixture. So they would put it at you. Remember your sister Sterling daughter, and you remember your mommy is superintendent. So there's one way where you won't get what you want, or you can't act out of character. And then in other instances, and as we got older, it changed. Let me put that in. As we got older, and people started to see us as individuals for who we were, the link with Daddy became different. So they would see us now and say, yeah, man, I don't expect any different because you're Sterling daughter. That kind of thing. Yeah. But in the early stage, it was a little rocky, and people would hold it against you in some way.
Oh, but I want to ask a question. How did those decisions, the thing that you see, impact your engagement now in church? I kind of like a jump. How did that impact? Because especially when you come from I wouldn't say a broken home, that the things that happen with the divorce.
It's broken. It's broken. Don't be afraid to say it. I came from a broken home.
Because how did that impact you, especially as a preacher's kid? Because as you said a while ago, your father consistently wants you to stay in the books.
Yes,
you understand what I mean?
yes.
And which is a good thing, because many people have the concept, once there's a preacher, you're supposed to be serving the Lord and don't get educated. You understand what I mean? But that is such an evil thing. But it could be good to the extreme. So how did that impact you now, being involved in ministry, coming from a preacher's kid and your children?
Yeah, well, I must say again, we were very different. Remember, we were always told that we are Sterling. So it was a literal thing. All the Sterlings I know have the same attitude, and it's a very small amount of us in Antigua, right? Wow. And so education is not an option.
For Sterlings?
For Sterlings, it's not an option. So all of us, we're all three professionals in our field. My brother has his degree in aeronautics, and he's an engineer. My sister's an accountant. She's an FPO, certified. I'm a psychologist. So for us, and like I said, the church that we went to also pushed that. So we didn't come from a church where they were like, oh, well, just take a job. Our pastor wouldn't even allow that. She wouldn't allow it. She would say to you, if you are a Christian, a young Christian, or you are a young person who's a Christian, excellence means excellence all around. That's how we grew up. Youth fellowship, Bible study, Wednesday night, prayer meeting, Sunday. We were being groomed. Even the young people there now, and it's so interesting that the girls normally stick around more than the boys, which is sad. But we were groomed into a place of excellence. People must say, you're the head and not the tail.
Yeah.
You're not better than nobody, but you're above. Don't act like you're anything else. And you must show that with the evidence. With Daddy now, because of it's literally a thing with us, how they operate. You were expected to, I'm going to give you a joke with that. You're expected to excel academically. Now, and I don't think my daddy would mind me saying this, but my father didn't feed me properly from the time I was 10 up until now. Right? Wow. But when I was doing my degrees, I remember one day he came to me and he said, you know, you don't have a degree yet. I'm talking how you talk, right? If anybody from the States is saying, you know, you don't have your own degree yet. Excuse me. The daddy and I have a similar way of talking, right? So we relate like that. He said, no. He said, the first degree is for me, the second degree is for your mother, and the third degree is for you. Well, give me a break. So up to now, I don't really have my own degree to own yet.
Oh,
and so
wow.
that was their mentality.
And he was serious, right?
Oh, yeah, he's serious. I mean, no, he doesn't hold you by the collar where that is concerned, but the expectation is that you must go the highest level. Yeah. And I remember when I was doing my math, when I went to do my first degree, which is my degree is psychology, and I told him, he's like, what are you doing psychology for? That is stupidness. Because he come from that school where, you know, psychology is against, Lord. No, he wanted us to be pastors, because he said, I have already seen you. And that's another thing he did with us. He said, the Lord showed me all y'all. And I remember he used to say to my sister, if my sister don't get saved, she going to wreak havoc in the kingdom of heaven. Because she's so strong-minded, she going to either be strong for Jesus or strong for the devil. He's not wrong. Yeah? Thank God she's serving Jesus.
Amen.
But
parents do see it.
They do. And he did see it. And I remember when I was finished my first degree, he said, okay, you have to do law now. I'm like, what? So from a young age, he said I had to be a lawyer. And this is something that happened with a cousin of mine too, his brother. They actually was upset to the point that they didn't want to talk to her because she didn't do law for second degree. So he tried that with me. I said, Daddy, if you did want to do law, if you had wanted to do law, you're free to go and do law. I am not doing law. So of course he was upset. So even the way we talk, my husband always says when he saw Daddy and I interacting first, he was so frightened because he doesn't talk to his daddy like that.
He was trying to save himself.
He was frightened, but you know, and you think because he's a pastor, you have to be a kind of way. Daddy was a very grassroots man. He's educated. Don't let him fool you. Even the way he carries himself, he's very educated. He's very, you know, into those things. But he said you have to do law, and that became a toss-up for us. So they said, I'm not doing law. So if you want a lawyer, you have to go back to law school for yourself. Wow. And I didn't. And now he says to me, well, you see, it's a good thing to do this because, you know, we have other things happening now in your area. But that is actually how we grew up. So he was never one who believed that because you're Christian, you don't have to have education. As a matter of fact, the principle was because you are a Christian, you must excel in every other area.
It's a biblical principle as well.
It is. It is.
It's a biblical principle.
So I'm intrigued now. I'm really intrigued. So all of these different things going on. So when you began to interact with young men and your husband came around, how was that reaction? You know, what response? Oh yes. Oh yes.
Listen, I said I was going to control the face now, but you see, maybe one day you need to bring my father on this program because people, unless you know my father, you would think the things I'm saying is weird. So let me give you an example. When we were growing up as little children, so like I said, Daddy left before I was 10. So I'm talking about like 5 to 9. He left when I was about 8, 9. He migrated. Daddy gave us a day once in a while to tell us what we want to tell us about him, what we want to say to him. So he would say to us, literally, he said, today is your day to tell me what you feel about me. He said, if you want to use bad word, use bad word. He would literally say this to us.
Wow.
He said, if you want to cuss me, cuss me. But he say, when the time done, don't try that. But I love it. As children, nobody's taking up that offer.
Oh no.
Because you think it's a trap.
Oh yes.
So He said, "You have nothing to say to me?" Like, "No, Daddy." But I honestly believe that he was serious. No, growing up and understanding him. So he would have said, he said to you on that day, "Say what you want to say. Tell me you don't like me. Say whatever. But don't try it tomorrow. Today is the day to say it." So much so that when I got old at teenage years, because I was a little bit more mature than my age, and when I used to go visit him, I decided to take it up. So I told my sister, "Well, we didn't take it then, we're going to take it now." When I had challenges with my parents being divorced, like I said, I always had a happy family idea in my mind, and it just never happened. And so when I would visit him, I would hold him to task. I'm like, "Why did you do that?" And I remember one time I asked him something. I would go and ask him about the marriage. "Why you didn't stay with my mother? And why this? And why that?" I would take him to task. But in terms of, I'm going somewhere with this in terms of what you asked.
Yeah.
When it came to dating, if my father saw you single for too long, this is literally what he would say. "Wait, no man see you? What happened? You're so ugly?" I'm like,
Oh. Ooh.
so you are at the place where, and I'm telling you, this is literally what he would say. My sister got married the other day. She got married older. She was the last. And she was like, "Well, a long time. It's so long, nobody was watching you." So he would actually be honest.
I love your father.
You need to get somebody in your life, unless you want to live by yourself. But other than that, you have to put yourself out there. And I could tell you one time I was dating one particular guy, and I don't think he understood the sterling concept at all. So there were some things that were happening in our relationship. It was not like we're just dating.
Yeah.
And he met Daddy and went and told Daddy. And Daddy tell him, "Well, I didn't really raise my daughters like that, so I really can't help you with that." So we didn't have the typical, people see me and think we were raised like this. We didn't have the typical, walking on high grass kind of thing. You had to be bright, you had to be bold, you had to be saved. That was it for Daddy.
But that is, the way he operates is really, it bring you out. Yeah. It bring the best out of you, and I guess your sisters and your brothers. And then you have an appreciation for ministry that most preachers' kids don't have. Yeah, you have because preachers' kids could, because sometimes of the pressure that they face in church, but because the appreciation you have for ministry, because Jesus Christ dealt with real people.
Oh yes.
He wasn't superficial. He wasn't like trying to play holier than thou. He was a real person, deal with real people. And I think the approach that your father have, many pastors or many people may not had that approach.
But I think as well, it gave you a balance, because for a lot of preachers' children who would have grown up with mother and father, if they start to speak to a young man or something, you have to, if you want to dress him down.
Yeah.
If a young lady comes to your son, you're looking at her like, who is she? Who are her parents? And they start to give you the whole rundown on them, and they don't like this or something. But because of how your household was, it gave you a better balance, and I think it put you in a position to understand, even as you became older, that marriages do
go wrong.
Yes, things do go wrong, and people do divorce. But at the end of the day, not because they divorce doesn't mean that they have to be fighting each other, and it doesn't mean that because they divorce that the two persons become unsaved
or they become enemies.
You understand? They love God any less, and the impact in their children's life is any less. Because your father never said, "Well, I'm not a pastor anymore, so I can't." No, he still held you to the standard and to the sterling standard, and you still had to be held to the standard of your mother, because at the end of the day, you won't getting a slack. Nobody was giving you slack.
No.
When we look at your bio, you said they have 4 children, right? I don't know how old they are, but how I don't know how old they are, because you're still looking young. You know what I mean? You look like me, right? You're looking young like me, right?
Yes. But I'm below you.
Right?
I have
But
some years to catch up.
yeah, yeah. Well, you will always be catching up. You know that, right?
Always.
Right. But you know, one of the things, especially when you have children and with that type of experience you have an the society that you came from, especially Antigua. Is Antigua right?
Yes.
Right. You came from Antigua. You have a different cultural setting. It may not be similar to Trinidad or Tobago, but Tobago is a totally different cultural system.
Yeah.
It's totally different. How do you see now that you and your husband are pastoring? How has that impacted your children based on your experiences? How it has impacted your children and how you
How
go
you
about?
raise them, yeah.
Because before you answer, because one of the things that I admire, I will never forget this. I don't know if I've ever told you before. I am very observant. And one time we was in a concert together, yourself, my husband, and all of us was together. But one thing I noted about him, how I think you were pregnant at the time with, or you just had the baby in one of them. I took note at how he consistently supported you with the children. I think you had a young one and one in your arms or one. But I didn't because I am very observant. But I looked at it and I said I will deliberate because we were sitting together and then we went out to eat together. And I looked at it, I say, because I wanted to see how consistent he was. And then I said, wow, this guy is so. And so now that you're sharing these experiences, and the both of you, because he's a Jamaican, right?
No, he's Antiguan too.
He's Antiguan,
Okay.
right? So how do you cope with these sharing this information with your children? How it working? Especially, and you are passing in a church, a very successful church, real nice church. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Well, I must say, and I have to give up all the kudos to my husband. He really is a wonderful guy, and I pray he stay that way. I know people change, right? But I sticking with he going to stay that way. And it is one thing my father always he said, when I met Nevin, he said, that is the one for her.
Yeah, once the father give you approval, it's a good approval.
Yeah. So, because if and it's interesting, let me just share this because I know a lot of people start struggle with daddy issues, and even in the church. And we had our daddy issues. I'm going to answer your question, but don't put this in because this may help somebody. We had it. That's why we call him Sterling sometimes. So you will say Sterling call you or something like that, you know. And we confronted him as well with what we didn't like. And mommy as well, because we were actually raised to think for yourself and speak. So one time he said to me something. I said, but I don't understand. I'm your child. What did you expect me to be so different? You know. But even in getting married, people were like, you gonna let your daddy give you away? I said, no, I won't. Because I didn't like how things happened with him and his marriage, but he must be a part of it. So what I did in my ceremony was something called a covering ceremony. That's something that's back in the Hebrew day, where the father covers the daughter with a veil symbolic of the parental covering, and then he passes that covering on to my husband. So my brother walked me down the aisle and gave me away. But is married 20-something years. But my father did the covering because no matter what, I can jump high, jump low. He's still my father. And we were taught to honor that. So even though my parents were divorced, my mother never ever said to us, your father this and your father that. When we got older and we started asking questions, she'd be like, okay, well, you're big now. I'm talking like big, like 18, 20, yeah? Not like 16, we're adults. We never got, actually one time we were doing it as children. We were teenagers. I was a young tween and my sister was a teenager, and something happened and we started to argue about daddy this and daddy this and daddy. And then my mother said, you don't ever speak about your father like that.
Wow.
And it kind of straightened us up because, I mean, we probably were right, but we weren't allowed to do it because we were taught, the Bible says, honor your mother and father, right? So now growing up in the church, and another thing that he helped us with was a world perspective. So I wasn't one of those, none of us grew up thinking that our village is the world. We were traveling since we were 5. Every year daddy will take us out. And then I continue with mommy as well. And I do it on myself. And I train my children like that. So coming into church as a pastor's wife, I allow my children, and I want to see that. Sometimes it's harder because the truth is I'm in a different denomination.
Yeah.
And the role and the way they operate is different to what I'm accustomed to. So I've had to kind of, reconfigure some things in my understanding and learn and grow. But one thing I've always said, and I told my husband this, because I know he's strong in his church too. We were both like that. We struggled, because I said, Nevin, I love my church. I'm a second generation Church of God, and he's a second generation Moravian. We don't play with our faith. Right? But I said to him, I don't care what church my children go to. And that's how Daddy was with us too. Once they are serving Christ and living their God-given purpose. Now, of course, once they're in Bible-based and Bible-teaching churches, that's not going to water down the word and give them no, wishy-washy thing or gospel. I'm not into that. And that part of me is a sterling. Because I don't care where you go, you can go under a rock. If it's Jesus there, serve Jesus there.
Yes.
You can go in the moon, serve Jesus there. And so I try to give my children that. The other thing is the expectation. I remember years ago when my first son was born, he's still very busy. All my children are very active. We were like that too. Because our father allowed us to move. We were not sit down children, and again, we didn't have TV. I think you have to understand that.
Yeah.
So we literally had to go outside and make play. I used to make TV with old box and so. People think we were poor. I thought my creativity is so big. My father did not allow us to do certain things. He used to call it, my brother does it with his children now. He calls it the idiot box. I'm like, dude, it's not an idiot box. It's really good entertainment. but you don't. He was busy, a little boy, 2 years old, and we went to a function, and he was a little bit more busy. And I was probably too tired to wrangle him in all. And a lady looked at him, and she was talking about her nephew or whatever. She was like, anyway, he won't be behaving like that. And she kind of looked down on my son, and I felt so hurt. I grabbed my child, and in the moment, I started to kind of, because I was really rough with my first child because of that, and I had to learn. You need to stop. And I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's 2.
Yes.
He hasn't done anything wrong or disrespectful.
Yes.
And my father is the one who would always tell us that. He would come and say, they're always saying them children rude. They're not rude. They just have to talk. So that's how we were raised.
Yes.
So you know the boundaries though. So there's some things people say, because I talk to Daddy a certain way, people think I disrespect him. I know my place. I ain't crossing certain boundaries, Sterling.
Yes.
That's it. But you are given the ability to think, to reason, and to express yourself. And I'm trying to give my children that in a different time, because the times are different too from when we were growing up.
And a different culture.
Different culture as well, and a different denomination.
Yes.
So like I said, where my father was and where we came from, there's a little bit more freedom in some things, and the norms are just different, so I have to learn. So my children will learn those norms, but I'm going to make sure they understand. Sometimes they laugh at me, that they're still a sterling. So the other day my children were like, Mommy, and they had a big joke. They said, Daddy's name is Nevin Sterling Lewis. I said, you're right.
It's such a warm feeling when you have preachers' kids that experience those lows and could see the blessing in the lows.
Yes, and see what they learned from it.
And see what they learn from it, because I know there are many pastors' kids who probably end up elsewhere because of those, especially when you come into when your father leave the church and he gone somewhere, say preaching somewhere else, and these things happen. It kind of impacts, and but really and truly, your father did an excellent job in preparing you, in preparing you for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah. Even though his approach,
and my mommy, don't forget mommy, because mommy was the mainstay. And she was you could call her minister too, because she used to do everything. Yeah. But she was the main. Let me just say this quickly, because you're saying that one of the times when we were young, when the church was breaking away, and when we came from the pants issue, because we were back that time, and the pastor said you can't wear pants. Even with youth fellowship, people started to leave the church, and there were other issues too, not just the pants issue, but other issues. And we got on our high horse, my sister and I, because my brother had already migrated by then, Daddy and my brother were gone. And we say, Mom, we're staying here for you. Is everybody leaving the church? And our mother, because my mother's peace. If you see my mother, you would not believe she married Sterling. I asked her once, I said, Mommy, nobody was checking for you?
She was peaceful.
Nobody. I said, nobody said like you, that you could pick up Sterling. I said, anyway, it's a good thing because I come, you know. She's peace to the dead. Strong woman, eh? She'd always say, don't mess with my dignity.
Yeah.
And I remember we said to her, you're not leaving the church? Is everybody leaving? Is Will Uncle leaving the church? And she said, nobody is going to come into any church and run me. I am here. When the Lord tells me to move, I will move.
Wow.
That pastor didn't last 2 years. Now, we were in the stage, and that's another thing. We got to see the church high, got to
And
see it
low.
low, and got to see it build back. Because mommy said, nobody running her for no church.
Yeah.
And she's here to serve God, and whatever he wants, he can do what he wants. She will still serve Christ.
Yeah,
And we stayed.
And that is a powerful testimony.
Yes, it is.
That is a really powerful testimony. It means because she was consistent. She know who she was. She know she know who she was too.
Yeah.
Who, you know what I mean? That she
Yeah.
being
And she was focused.
And she was focused.
Yeah.
And
And I think she had a real understanding of her purpose.
and
Yes.
pastoral care.
Yes.
And that is I mean, many people leave church for any other reasons.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
but she
simple
understood what's
things.
going on, you know what I mean? So I really, as I was saying earlier, I really like you pass on these values to pastors' children because you have experienced it, you know what I mean? What would you like to say to a woman, a pastor's girl,
Daughter.
that is struggling with her, let me say, her sexuality? Yeah.
That's a big one. You know, one thing, and it's interesting you say that because I was watching a lady's ministry the other day on TV, and she's a former lesbian who was transformed by the power of Christ. There were some things, again, we didn't have, you know, options were with daddy and with mommy. And I don't know, I don't know where he stands with that. But I would say to every person, every pastor's child out there, especially those who are struggling with issues like that, it's important that you have your own encounter with Jesus. My parents' faith took me as far as it could have, and it was supposed to. I had to encounter Jesus for myself, and I did. Now, the thing is, because of how I was raised, it was easier for me to encounter Jesus because I had challenges. I had questions. I had lots of questions. I remember I used to like to dance. My father always tell the story. He used to like to whine. Yes. So, and one time my father said I was burning, y'all know Burning Flames, right?
Yes.
So Burning Flames was hot back in the day. And he said one time Burning Flames song came on and I was well dancing. And he said, and he was always very calm. I need to learn some of his calmness. I have some of it. He said, Billie, you know, say a save. And I said, yes, but like dancing? He said, okay. No, somebody else. And I can imagine myself as we were trying to whine them times. I was a little girl. I still love music. And I remember another time, so I'll share the disparity with it. My mother, when I came home from university the first time, I had become disillusioned with church. And I think a lot of it had to do with daddy too and going through some stuff because he, you know, a lot of stuff. And I said to mommy, I'm not coming to any Christmas service. Yeah, this foolishness in church about Christmas is all pagan. You know how we get on when we get high horse, and I love philosophy. So, you know, on my high horse. And she said, calm. Okay, no problem. When you're ready, you come back. Well, the next year I was back in willingly, and I well enjoyed myself. It took me a year. So we didn't have that pressure behind you. You must be. We didn't have that. She said, okay, when you're ready. And she said, I pray that the Lord opens your mind to understand what's going on. That's what she said. And the next year I was back. So I would say to them, have your own encounter with Jesus Christ. And understand, it's not only for the pastor's kids, but anybody who's struggling with faith. That no matter what people do, people are supposed to be representatives of Christ, but sometimes we can have misrepresentation. It happens everywhere else.
True.
Do not allow the misrepresentation to the errors or the faults of those who show Christ to you in your early years. Move you away from who Christ really is. That's why you have to have your own experience. I had to hop over my father's foolishness and experience Christ for myself. I had to hop over my mother's docility because I thought at one point she was very docile. So we never got along for many years because like, you make people take advantage of you and blah, blah, blah. We didn't get along. And she said, you will come to see one day. And I did. So I used to hop over and I had to get to know Christ. So the robustness that I have, and I always think about Saul and Paul, the conversion. I could be like a Saul and a Paul. I would just go bam. And in the other way, I come like the women in the Bible who were just intact and together and, more calm. I'm not always that calm. But you have to experience Jesus for yourself. And you also have to only ride on your parents' faith for so long and not let the mistakes of men define the qualities and character of God.
Wow.
The mistakes of men or the character of man does not define the character of God.
That is
Amen.
correct.
And you
So
have
true.
to come to understand that. And you know what? Forgiveness is important. It's hard. It took me years. But it's so releasing. It's so empowering. It takes you to a different level. But at the end of it, the bottom line, the cap of it, get to know Jesus for yourself. Experience him. Put down your parents' faith. Put down your questions and just go straight to Jesus. I know one of the things I struggled with for many years is because of my father, I just always thought I wasn't going to be a good Christian. And I used to struggle with, how could I ever keep myself saved? I don't know how to do that. Because I will tell you what I have to tell you in the first instance, and I would walk out, and I would, And I remember as a young girl, I was probably like 18, I don't think I was 20 yet. I was in a service, and I had an encounter with God. It kind of went a different way after, but I remember wanting to go to the altar, and something saying to me, girl, don't even try that, because, you can't stay safe. And it's like the Spirit of God was speaking to me. You don't have to keep yourself safe. That's what I do.
That's right.
You just go.
Wow.
And I went. And it was a transforming thing for me. No, it wasn't an immediate thing, but it actually wasn't so long either. Because I always wanted Christ. I always wanted the things of God. And having Daddy the way he was kind of messed it up for a while. But then as I learned to understand and really grow, that didn't even become a barrier for me. And so those limitations, so the enemy uses that to hold you captive. But you have to have that experience and pursue Christ for yourself. Once you experience Christ for yourself, not even a parent can stop you or change your mind.
Amen.
No matter what they go through.
Amen.
So experience God for yourself.
Yeah, that is such a powerful note. You know what I mean? I can't have you here not being a psychologist, and we're in the month of mental health. And our children being on Zoom, all these platform,
things,
you know what I mean? What word of encouragement you want to give, you know what I mean, helping deal with mental health, especially at the church? And many times believers feel like they're exempted from this, but some of the most mental health that is needed.
Some of us in the church feel every time we talk about mental
It's
health,
a
it's demons.
demons.
It's a demon, yeah.
And it's really not. What advice would you give, especially in this? We're talking about parent, the junior, to help in this area.
Yeah, I love that, and I always share my situation with that, because I said when I was called back to ministry, in my psychology after I finished, it was my master's, God called me specifically back to the church.
Wow.
And it was a weird thing, because I went in the time when people saying if you study psychology and philosophy, then you're not saved, because philosophy is against God and stuff. But God called me right back to the church because of what you just said. There are a lot of people in the church who deal with mental health issues, and we cloak it with "I'm blessed and highly favored." How you doing, sis? I'm blessed and highly favored. That's when your belly bust. I mean, no. And they say, "How I think?" Well, I trust the Lord. At the time you're shaking your fist at God. And the incongruence, we call it in psychology, incongruence causes so much breakdown. So sometimes our mental illness comes from our incongruence with our faith and our reality. But I would say especially in this COVID time, to all the persons out there, this too will pass.
Amen.
And I know it's hard. I know it sounds cliche, but hear me out. Hear me out. The Bible says, weeping endures for the night, joy comes in the morning. Why? Because morning must follow night.
True.
What we don't get an answer to. So, am I correct? It's going to end? Yes. That's scientific, that's biblical, right?
Yeah.
Follow the science, follow the word of God.
Yeah.
It's going to end because morning must follow night. What we don't have an answer to is how long and deep the night is going to be.
Yes.
How long, deep, and dark. And so what you have to do is to learn how to operate in the darkness. We can teach our children, one, to have hope. That's one thing we have to teach them, that it's going to end. And two, the next thing we're teaching them is tolerance. I always tell people this, I guess because I work in the behavior change field. A lot of people, including our adults, don't have good tolerance. And so when the stress comes, they give up, they frazzle away because they don't know how to endure. We don't know how to endure the afflictions. So in this time, you could find ways to keep yourself in the now and also to keep yourself hoping for the future. So you engage in things that keep your mind, that will keep your mind busy, but not distracting. You only distract yourself for a while. What you're doing is transforming that mindset. The Bible says what? Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. If you keep thinking, Lord, this COVID ever kill are we? You're probably going to die with COVID. Even if it's not COVID, the virus, something about COVID will strike you down. And so you have to transform that mind. So I keep telling people, COVID is not going to tell my story. Sorry, that is something my father taught me. Stop saying Sterling, eh? That's what my father taught me. He would always say to us, I don't care what they fight in. One man will walk out of that way, it's going to be Sterling. So I say, COVID is not telling my story. I will tell the story of COVID. So we have the hope. And then you find things to do in the moment. This is a time for us to tap into our faith, tap into our creativity, and tap into our relationships. Listen, even if it is the core relationship of relationship itself, as we connect with God. So teach our children to just be hopeful in the moment and do things to help them feel better in the moment until the change comes. But I want to encourage all of us that morning must come. The Bible says as long as there is seed time and harvest, I think it's on the other way around, right, you will have it. So morning will come, we will get out of this. You just have to hold on. It's the attitude that we hold on in the darkness that determines how we embrace the morning. Right? So just encourage somebody.
This is such a powerful. I am so. I'm feeling so warm.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah, because it's such a. You know what I mean? The joy of surviving what you survive, but you're still enjoying the journey.
Exactly.
You know, start enjoying the journey as a preacher's kid. You know what I mean? And the word of encouragement they just give us in terms of being mentally prepared, and you know what I mean. So we really want to appreciate you coming tonight and sharing us. I want you to stay on the line as we close the program. I want you to stay on the line. Don't go anywhere. Stay on the line. So people, as you know, you can contact her. You can contact her. You have an office. You have a number you want to give. So
number, yes. 294-3444, or they can check me on Facebook, Impact Change Concepts. The number is 294-3444. Telephone or WhatsApp is fine.
Right. So you get the numbers. We will put it in our chat in the description, so you could go on, because let me tell you, it is so important in this stage that, let me tell you, sometimes pastors just need to sit down. People, you will call them a shrink, you want to call them. You just need to sit down and talk to somebody. Somebody needs somebody, because the only way God gonna bless you is through somebody. So and if you're gonna get a heal, you're gonna get healed what? Through somebody. So people.
And this is something my father tells me all the time. He said, people, not only Satan works through people, God works through people too.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So it's a real powerful. I'm so encouraged, you know what I mean? I'm at a different level. You will not believe how I'm at a different level. Just by this conversation that we're having on intimate moments. And that is why we have intimate moments. So I want you to stay on the line. So stay on the line. Don't hang up yet. Stay on the line. So as we close the program, amen. Praise God. We want to thank God for I call a preacher Billie Sterling. I mean, sometimes, let me tell you something. When God call you into ministry, sometimes people don't understand when God call into ministry. It may not be necessarily the preacher, but he is the one that gives gifts.
That's
you understand what I mean? And when you realize,
and the thing is, even though she is not a preacher from the pulpit, or she's not, the main pastor, she still functions.
She's ministering.
Yes, she's still ministering because she has the opportunity to reach a wide
Yes.
range of persons in the church, out of the church, and that is so powerful.
Amen. So I want to really encourage each and every one.
Yes.
As the numbers, we'll put those numbers in the description. You
Yes.
could call. Especially, I'll tell you in the truth, some of us as pastors, let me tell you something. I tell you, we all know we build in the church, and sometimes it could be so overwhelmed. You know that.
Yes.
You could be so overwhelmed. You're at it, you're going, and you will pray, you will fast, but there's a
Yes.
difference from praying and fasting,
Yeah.
and making your life fast by sitting down and hear some good.
Yeah.
The Bible says, in the
Yeah.
multitude of counsel,
Counsel,
there is
there's
safety. And
So-
you know what I mean? So, preachers' kids on this journey,
But I loved her story. I loved the fact that she said that she always had an opinion. She was outspoken, and I think that persons need to understand that pastors' children are also outspoken,
and they have opinions.
and they have opinions. You understand? And that it's important to allow them to be who God has created them to be.
All right. So we are coming to the close. We want to thank
Yes.
each and every one for being a part of Intimate Moments. As we normally say, when you could go on our YouTube channel, Intimate Moments. This month we are just doing the journey of the preacher's kids.
Yes,
So
preacher's
you will
kids.
understand the highs and lows, the ins. And tonight was just I'm telling you, I'm feeling much better. So
Yes,
I want you to be a
very nice.
part of what God is doing. Listen, I always say the COVID-19 is the greatest setup in the church. And if you miss this season, you will never get another season like this. Make full use.
Yes.
Or one person say, make full proof of your
Your
ministry.
ministry, that's
So
right.
you've got to do it right now. Don't let me preach here now. So, but I'm telling you something. We always say on Intimate Moments, one moment of intimacy with God will change your life forever. We're going to see you next time. God bless you.